Document, Part 2. The next morning, William Bill Carter sat in the small, sterile interview room at the police station. The walls were painted a pale beige, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Across from him sat Captain Ryan Dawson, a tall man with graying hair and a face lined by years of stress and responsibility. Dawson had brought coffee for both of them, though Bill barely touched his. His mind was still replaying the events of the previous night. "I can't apologize enough for what happened," Dawson said again, leaning forward slightly. "Officer Harper's behavior was completely unacceptable. We're conducting an internal investigation to figure out why he acted that way." Bill nodded slowly, stirring his untouched coffee absent-mindedly. "I appreciate your apology, Captain," he replied. "But I'd like to understand more about what led to this." Harper seemed off. Like he wasn't just overreacting, he was following some kind of agenda. Dawson hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "That's something we're trying to get to the bottom of," he admitted. "Harper has been with the department for several years, but lately there have been concerns about his conduct. Complaints from civilians, strange patterns in his reports, nothing concrete until now, though." Bill leaned back in his chair, studying Dawson carefully. He could tell the captain was holding something back. "You think someone might have influenced him?" Bill asked pointedly. "Someone? Outside the department?" Dawson sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "It's too early to say for sure," he said cautiously. "But yes, it's possible. There are rumors, nothing official yet, that Harper has been associating with questionable individuals. People who might have reasons to target someone. Like you." "Target me?" Bill repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Why would anyone want to do that? I'm retired. I haven't worked an active case in years. That's what we need to find out," Dawson replied. "If you're willing, I'd like to let you review Harper's recent activities. Maybe you'll notice something we missed." Bill considered the offer for a moment. On one hand, he didn't want to get dragged into another investigation after all these years. But on the other hand, his instincts told him this wasn't just a random mistake. Someone had gone to great lengths to set him up, and he wanted to know why. "All right," Bill said finally. "I'll take a look. But I'll need access to everything, his files, communications, anything relevant." Dawson nodded eagerly. "Of course, anything you need. Officer Myers will assist you. She's already expressed interest in getting to the truth." True to his word, Dawson introduced Bill to Laura Myers shortly afterward. Myers was professional yet approachable, her sharp eyes suggesting she was as determined as Bill to uncover the truth. Together they retreated to a quiet corner of the station where stacks of files and a laptop awaited them. For hours, Bill sifted through Harper's records. At first glance, nothing stood out. Traffic stops, routine patrols, minor infractions. It all seemed ordinary. But as Bill dug deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. Certain cases were marked closed without proper documentation. Others showed evidence of tampering, with witness statements altered or missing entirely. "This doesn't make sense," Myers muttered, flipping through a folder. "Look at this one. A shoplifting charge dismissed because the victim recanted." "But there's no record of the victim ever being interviewed." Bill frowned, jotting down notes. "It's almost like someone's covering their tracks," he said thoughtfully, "and not very well. Whoever's behind this isn't used to being questioned." As they continued their review, one name kept appearing: Victor Kane. Bill recognized it immediately. Kane was a wealthy businessman known for his philanthropy and high-profile social events. But beneath the polished exterior lay whispers of corruption, allegations of bribery, illegal dealings, and connections to organized crime. None of it had ever stuck, thanks to Kane's team of expensive lawyers. "What does Kane have to do with Harper?" Myers wondered aloud, tapping her pen against the desk. "I don't know yet," Bill admitted. "But if Harper was working for him or taking orders from him, it would explain a lot, including why I was pulled over last night." Myers nodded, her expression grim. "If that's true, then this goes way beyond one bad cop. We're talking about systemic corruption." Before they could delve further, a commotion erupted near the front of the station. Raised voices echoed down the hallway, followed by hurried footsteps. Moments later, another officer burst into the room, panting slightly. "Captain Dawson wants to see you both," he said urgently. "Now." Bill and Myers exchanged a glance before following the officer to Dawson's office. The captain looked unusually tense, pacing back and forth behind his desk. When they entered, he stopped abruptly, gesturing for them to sit. "We've got a problem," Dawson began without preamble. Harper lawyered up faster than I expected. "And guess who's representing him? Victor Kane's personal attorney." Bill felt a chill run down his spine. "So Kane is involved," he murmured. "It gets worse," Dawson continued. "While we were processing Harper, we found something in his locker, a burner phone. It had encrypted messages linking him directly to Kane. They weren't exactly subtle either. One message read, 'Take care of the ex-director tonight. Myers.'" Let out a low whistle. "That settles it," she said. "This wasn't just a rogue cop acting alone. Someone higher up gave the order." Dawson nodded grimly. "Which means we're dealing with a much bigger operation than we initially thought. If Kane finds out, we're onto him. Things could get ugly." Bill sat quietly, his mind racing. This was no longer just about clearing his name or punishing Harper. It was about exposing a network of corruption that reached far beyond the local police department. And if Kane was willing to orchestrate a setup like this, there was no telling what else he was capable of. "Do we have enough to move on Kane?" Bill asked, breaking the silence. "Not yet," Dawson replied. "We need more evidence, something irrefutable. Otherwise he'll walk away scot-free, same as always." "Then we'll find it," Bill said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Over. The next few days, Bill threw himself into the investigation. With Myers' help, he pieced together Harper's movements leading up to the traffic stop. Surveillance footage showed Harper meeting with a shadowy figure in a parking garage late at night. Though the person's face was obscured, their luxury, car bore license plates registered to one of Kane's companies. Meanwhile, Myers focused on tracing the burner phone's messages. She discovered that Harper wasn't the only officer communicating with Kane's circle. Several others appeared to be on his payroll, feeding him information or carrying out tasks in exchange for cash. As the evidence mounted, so did the tension within the department. Rumors spread among the officers, dividing them into factions. Some supported the investigation, while others feared retaliation if Kane learned they were cooperating. Dawson struggled to maintain order, knowing that even a single leak could jeopardize everything. One evening, as Bill reviewed the latest findings in his makeshift workspace, Myers joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You've been at this non-stop," she said, handing him a cup. "When's the last time you slept?" Bill chuckled softly. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "Not until we bring Kane down." Myers smiled faintly, though her expression remained serious. "You remind me of the stories I heard about you when I first joined the force," she said. "How you never gave up, no matter how tough things got." "Well, old habits die hard," Bill said with a shrug. "Besides, this feels personal now. Harper tried to frame me, not just for robbery, but for something violent. That sends a message, and I want to know why." Myers nodded, sipping her coffee. "We'll get answers," she promised. Together. Despite the mounting pressure, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were closing in on something big. Every clue they uncovered brought them closer to unraveling Kane's web of deceit. Yet with each step forward, the stakes grew higher. If they made even one misstep, the consequences could be catastrophic. Late that night, as Bill drove home, he reflected on how quickly his peaceful retirement had turned into a battle against forces he hadn't faced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and deception. But deep down, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't walk away, not when justice was on the line. Little did he realize, however, that the real test was yet to come. Somewhere in the shadows, Victor Kane was watching and waiting. Document, Part 4. The note burned in William Bill Carter's pocket as he drove home. The words echoed in his mind, taunting him with their menace. "Stop digging. Or else. It was a clear warning, but instead of fear, Bill felt a surge of determination. Victor Kane had made a mistake. Sending thugs to intimidate him only proved that they were closing in, and if Kane thought a threat would make Bill back down, he didn't know who he was dealing with. When Bill arrived home, he locked the doors and drew the curtains tightly shut. He sat at his kitchen table staring at the crumpled piece of paper. His instincts screamed that this wasn't just a random act of intimidation. It was calculated. Kane wanted him to feel vulnerable, to doubt himself. But Bill refused to let fear take hold. Instead, he began planning his next move. Early the following morning, Bill met Laura Myers at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. They had agreed to keep their meetings low-key, avoiding places where they might be seen together. Over steaming cups of coffee, Bill recounted the events of the previous night, showing Myers the threatening note. "That son of a bitch," Myers muttered, her jaw tightening as she read the message. "He's trying to scare you off." "It's not going to work," Bill replied firmly. "If anything, it confirms we're onto something big. Kane wouldn't send someone unless he felt cornered." Myers nodded, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "So what's our next step? We've got evidence linking him to the storage facility, but we still need more to tie him directly to the crimes." Bill leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We focus on the freight company. If we can prove Kane used it to transport illegal goods or launder money, we'll have enough to bring him down. But we'll need help, someone who knows how these operations work." Myers hesitated, then said quietly, "I know someone who might be able to assist. An old contact from my days in narcotics. She's, let's say, well-connected. If anyone can dig up dirt on the freight company, it's her." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Can we trust her?" "She owes me a favor," Myers said simply. "And she hates guys like Kane. Let me reach out to her. I'll make sure she understands how important this is." Later that day, Myers introduced Bill to Samantha Sam Lewis, a wiry woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. Sam had spent years working undercover in organized crime rings before retiring to run her own private investigation firm. Her expertise was exactly what they needed. After explaining the situation, Bill handed Sam a copy of the shipping records they'd recovered from the storage facility. She studied them carefully, her brow furrowing as she flipped through the pages. Finally, she looked up, her expression grim. "This is bigger than I thought," she said. "These shipments aren't just moving cash and weapons. They're smuggling people too. Refugees, undocumented workers, anyone desperate enough to pay for passage. Kane's using the freight company as a front to exploit them." Bill felt a wave of anger wash over him. Human trafficking. This wasn't just about greed anymore. It was about lives being destroyed. The stakes had never been higher. "We need proof," Bill said, his voice tight. "Something concrete that ties Kane to all of this." Sam nodded. "There's a warehouse near the docks where they process incoming shipments. If we can get inside, we'll find what we're looking for. But it won't be easy. Security there is tight, and if Kane catches wind of us snooping around, things could get ugly fast." Myers glanced at Bill, concern flickering across her face. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Going in blind is risky." "I'm sure," Bill replied without hesitation. "We don't have time to wait for another lead. Every day we delay, Kane grows stronger. We end this now." That evening, the trio devised a plan. Using forged credentials, Sam posed as a new employee sent to inspect inventory discrepancies. Myers and Bill stayed nearby, monitoring communications and ready to intervene if anything went wrong. The operation was set for midnight, when the warehouse would be minimally staffed. As Sam slipped into the building, Bill and Myers watched anxiously from a van parked a safe distance away. Through hidden cameras embedded in Sam's jacket, they could see rows of crates stacked high, guarded by men carrying rifles. The air inside reeked of oil and sweat, and the tension was palpable. Sam moved cautiously, pretending to examine labels while discreetly scanning documents. She found ledgers detailing payments to Kane's accounts, along with passenger manifests listing names and destinations of those smuggled aboard the ships. Each page confirmed their worst fears. Kane wasn't just profiting from crime. He was orchestrating a vast network of exploitation. But as Sam reached for a particularly incriminating file, alarms blared throughout the warehouse. Red lights flashed and footsteps thundered closer. Someone had triggered the security system. "Get out of there," Myers hissed into her earpiece. "Now!" Sam didn't hesitate. Grabbing the files, she bolted toward the exit, dodging guards, who shouted orders and raised their weapons. Outside, Bill and Myers sprang into action, pulling the van alongside the loading dock. Sam leapt in just as bullets ricocheted off the metal siding. "Go, go, go!" Bill yelled, gripping the dashboard, as Myers slammed her foot on the accelerator. Tires screeched as they sped away, leaving chaos behind. Back at a safe house, they pored over the stolen documents. Everything pointed directly to Kane, his signature on contracts, his initials scribbled in the margins of manifests, even photos of him shaking hands with known criminals. It was irrefutable proof. "This is it," Bill said, his voice filled with quiet triumph. "This is what we've been waiting for." But their victory was short-lived. As dawn broke, news spread that Victor Kane had gone into hiding. His lawyer scrambled to cover his tracks, and rumors swirled that he planned to flee the country. Time was running out. "We need to act fast," Myers urged. "If he escapes, we lose everything." Bill nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then, we bring the fight to him." The final showdown was coming, and Bill knew it would be dangerous. But after all they'd uncovered, the corruption, the violence, the suffering inflicted on innocent lives, he couldn't turn back now. Justice demanded action, and Bill Carter was ready to deliver it. Document. Part 3. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for William Bill Carter. Each morning began with a fresh stack of documents, new leads to chase, and questions that seemed to multiply faster than answers. Laura Myers had become his unofficial partner in the investigation, her sharp instincts and unwavering determination matching Bill's own resolve. Together they worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of evidence that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of Victor Kane's influence. One afternoon, as Bill sifted through surveillance footage from various locations around town, Myers burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this," she said breathlessly, holding up her phone. On the screen was a grainy image captured by a traffic camera. It showed Harper meeting with another man in a dimly lit alleyway. The man wasn't Kane himself, but someone who looked familiar, someone Bill recognized immediately. "That's Gerald Phelps," Bill muttered, narrowing his eyes at the screen. "He used to work for Kane years ago. Rumor has it he handles dirty jobs no one else wants to touch." Myers nodded eagerly. "Exactly. And get this. I traced Phelps's movements over the past few weeks. He's been spotted near several storage facilities outside of town. One of them belongs to a shell company linked to Kane." Bill leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Storage facilities often served as hiding spots for illegal goods or sensitive documents. If Phelps was using one under Kane's name, it could mean they were sitting on a goldmine of evidence. But getting inside wouldn't be easy. Not without risking exposure. "We need to check it out," Bill said firmly. "But we can't just walk in there. Not with Harper already lawyered up and Kane watching our every move." Myers frowned, considering their options. "What if we send someone undercover?" she suggested. "Someone who doesn't look like they're connected to us." Bill shook his head. "Too risky. If Kane catches wind of it, whoever goes in won't come out alive." For a moment they sat in silence, weighing the possibilities. Then Myers snapped her fingers, a spark of inspiration lighting up her face. "What about Captain Dawson? He could authorize a routine inspection, health code violations, fire hazards, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. It was a bold idea, but it might work." Bill nodded slowly, liking the sound of it. "All right," he said. "Let's run it by Dawson and see what he thinks." Later that evening, Bill met with Captain Ryan Dawson in his office. The captain listened intently as Myers outlined their plan, his expression growing more serious with each passing minute. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. "It's risky," Dawson admitted. "But if we play it right, it could give us the leverage we need. I'll authorize the inspection, but we'll have to keep it quiet, even for most of my own officers. If word gets out—" "I understand," Bill interrupted gently. "We'll handle it discreetly. Just make sure your team knows to stick to the script." Dawson nodded reluctantly. "All right, I'll arrange it for tomorrow morning. But you two stay out of sight. If anything goes wrong, I don't want either of you anywhere near the scene." The next day, a small team of inspectors arrived at the storage facility, ostensibly checking for compliance issues. Unbeknownst to anyone except Dawson, Myers, and Bill, they carried concealed recording devices and cameras. As they moved through the rows of units, they found nothing unusual at first. But then, near the back corner of the building, they stumbled upon something unexpected: a locked unit filled with crates marked with foreign shipping labels. One of the inspectors jotted down notes while pretending to examine the lock. Meanwhile, another member of the team quietly slipped a tiny camera into a crack between the doors. What they saw inside sent chills down everyone's spines. Stacked neatly inside were stacks of cash, weapons, and files containing detailed records of bribes paid to local officials, including police officers. Back at the station, Myers and Bill reviewed the footage, their hearts pounding with anticipation. This was it, the smoking gun they'd been searching for. With this kind of evidence, they could finally bring Kane to justice. But as they celebrated their breakthrough, reality set in. They still needed to connect Kane directly to the operation. Without proof that he was orchestrating everything, he'd likely walk away unscathed once again, and time was running out. Every hour they delayed gave Kane more opportunity to cover his tracks. "We need to dig deeper," Bill said grimly. "There's got to be something tying him to this place, something undeniable." Myers agreed, though her voice carried a note of caution. "We've pushed our luck far enough already. Keep pushing and we might lose it all." Bill didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared at the screen, replaying the footage over and over. Something about the crates nagged at him, a detail he couldn't quite place. Then it hit him. The shipping labels weren't just random. They bore the insignia of a freight company based in New York, one with ties to organized crime. "Got it," Bill exclaimed suddenly, pointing at the screen. "This company, it's a front, a pipeline for moving illegal goods across state lines. If we trace its operations, we might find a direct link to Kane." Without wasting another second, Myers pulled up the company's records online. What they discovered confirmed their suspicions. The freight company had received multiple payments from accounts registered to Kane's businesses. Moreover, several shipments coincided with dates when key players in Kane's network had disappeared or turned up dead. "This is it," Myers whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "We've got him." But even as they prepared to present their findings to Dawson, a shadow loomed over their progress. That night, as Bill drove home, he noticed a black sedan trailing him at a distance. At first, he tried to convince himself it was paranoia, just a coincidence. But when the car followed him through 3 consecutive turns, his instincts screamed danger. Bill gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind racing. Whoever was behind the wheel wasn't there by accident. They knew he was onto them, and they weren't afraid to act. Instead of heading straight home, Bill took a detour, weaving through side streets until he reached a deserted parking lot. Pulling into a spot, he turned off his engine and waited. Moments later, the sedan rolled in behind him, its headlights cutting through the darkness. 2 men stepped out, their faces obscured by hoods. One of them approached Bill's car, rapping sharply on the window. "Get out," he growled, his voice low and menacing. Bill hesitated, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew better than to comply blindly, but he also knew resistance might end badly. Slowly, he opened the door and stepped out, keeping his hands visible. "What do you want?" Bill asked, his tone steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The man smirked, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "A message," he said simply, shoving it into Bill's hand. From Mr. Kane. Don't make him regret letting you live this long. With that, the two men climbed back into the sedan and sped off, leaving Bill standing alone in the empty lot. His hands trembled as he unfolded the note. Written in bold letters were 4 chilling words. Stop digging, or else. For a moment, Bill stood frozen, the weight of the threat sinking in. But as anger surged through him, he realized one thing. Kane was scared. Scared enough to send thugs to intimidate him. And if Kane was scared, it meant they were close. Closer than ever before. Climbing back into his car, Bill resolved not to back down. Whatever it took, he would see this through. Justice demanded nothing less. Document, Part 1. The evening was calm, the kind that invites quiet reflection. William Bill Carter eased his car onto the highway, the hum of the engine blending with the soft rustle of leaves outside. It had been a long day, but a fulfilling one. He'd spent hours catching up with an old colleague over coffee, reminiscing about their days at the FBI. Now, as he drove back toward his home in suburban Virginia, Bill felt a sense of peace. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The road ahead was nearly empty, save for the occasional passing car. Bill wasn't someone who craved attention. Despite his years as the director of the FBI, he preferred a simple life now that he was retired. His reputation for fairness and dedication still lingered, though he rarely thought about it. Tonight, he was simply a man heading home after a pleasant visit. But fate has a way of interrupting even the most ordinary moments. As Bill approached a stretch of highway flanked by tall trees, he noticed flashing lights in his rearview mirror. Blue and red lights pulsed rhythmically, breaking the tranquility of the evening. He frowned, glancing at his speedometer. He hadn't been speeding, not even close. Still, he signaled and pulled over to the side of the road, turning off the engine as he came to a stop. The air was cool as he rolled down his window. Bill rested his hands on the steering wheel, waiting patiently. A figure emerged from the patrol car parked behind him. Officer Daniel Harper walked toward him, his boots crunching against the gravel. In one hand he held a flashlight, its beam cutting through the growing darkness. Harper's face was stern, his jaw set tightly as he approached. "Good evening, officer," Bill said calmly, keeping his tone friendly. "Is there something wrong?" Harper didn't respond immediately. He shone the flashlight into the car, scanning the interior before focusing on Bill. There was something unsettling about the way Harper looked at him, like he was sizing him up or searching for something specific. Finally, Harper spoke, his voice sharp and clipped. "License and registration, please." Bill nodded, reaching into his pocket for his wallet. As he handed over his driver's license, he leaned slightly to grab the registration from the glove compartment. Harper watched him closely, his hand resting near the holster of his gun. Something felt off, but Bill tried not to let it bother him. Maybe the officer was just having a bad day. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Harper asked abruptly, his tone accusatory. "No, sir, I don't," Bill replied, maintaining his composure. "I wasn't speeding and my lights are all working fine. Did I miss something?" Harper ignored the question. Instead, he studied the license intently, then glanced back at Bill. "You match the description of a suspect we've been looking for," he said, his voice rising slightly. "Armed robbery, dangerous individual." Bill blinked, momentarily stunned. "I'm sorry, but that's impossible. I'm a retired FBI director. You can verify my identity if you need to." Harper's expression darkened. "Don't try to pull that trick on me," he snapped. "Criminals always have excuses. Step out of the car now." Bill felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't how police officers were supposed to act, not unless they had solid evidence. He decided to stay calm, knowing that panicking would only make things worse. Slowly, he opened the car door and stepped out, keeping his hands visible. "Officer, I assure you there's been a misunderstanding," he said firmly but politely. "If you'll check my credentials, you'll see—" "Shut up!" Harper barked, cutting him off. He drew his weapon, pointing it directly at Bill. "Hands where I can see them, no sudden moves." Bill froze, his heart pounding. He raised his hand slowly, careful not to provoke the clearly agitated officer. All right, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Let's take a deep breath here. I'm not resisting. Just tell me what's going on." But Harper wasn't listening. His finger hovered dangerously close to the trigger, and his eyes darted around as if expecting someone else to appear. Bill realized this situation could spiral, out of control at any moment. He needed to de-escalate it. But how? Just as the tension reached its peak, another set of headlights appeared in the distance. A second patrol car pulled up behind Harper's vehicle, its tires skidding slightly, on the gravel. Officer Laura Myers stepped out, her presence immediately commanding attention. She was younger than Harper, with a no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. "What's going on here, Harper?" Myers demanded, walking briskly toward them. Her gaze shifted between Harper and Bill, assessing the situation. "Why do you have your weapon drawn?" Harper hesitated, his grip tightening on the gun. "This guy matches the description of a wanted fugitive," he muttered, his voice less confident now. "He's dangerous." Myers frowned, clearly skeptical. She turned to Bill, her tone softer but still professional. "Sir, are you okay? Do you know why you were pulled over?" Bill nodded, lowering his hand slightly. "I have no idea why. I was stopped," he explained. "I wasn't breaking any laws. Officer Harper here claims I match the description of someone involved in armed robbery. I told him I'm a retired FBI director, but he doesn't seem interested in verifying that." Myers raised an eyebrow, glancing back at Harper. "Is that true?" she asked sharply. "Did you confirm his identity before escalating like this?" Harper shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. "I don't trust criminals," he muttered defensively. "They'll say anything to get out of trouble." "That's enough," Myers said firmly. She stepped closer to Harper, her body language assertive. "Lower your weapon, we'll handle this properly. If he's who he says he is, then you owe him an apology, and possibly more than that." For a moment it seemed like Harper might argue further. But under Myers's unwavering gaze, he reluctantly lowered his gun. The relief washing over Bill was palpable, though he remained cautious. Myers gestured for him to return to his car while she dealt with Harper. Once Bill was safely seated again, Myers confronted Harper more aggressively. Their voices carried faintly through the night air, snippets of their argument drifting toward him. Harper sounded defensive, almost desperate, while Myers grew increasingly frustrated. Whatever was happening, it was clear that Harper's behavior wasn't normal. Minutes later, backup arrived, a third patrol car pulling up alongside the others. 2 additional officers joined Myers, and together they managed to subdue Harper, placing him in handcuffs. Bill watched silently as Harper was led to Myers's patrol car, his protests fading into the background. Captain Ryan Dawson arrived shortly afterward, his expression grim as he surveyed the scene. He introduced himself to Bill, apologizing profusely for the ordeal. "Mr. Carter, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for what happened tonight," he said sincerely. "We'll conduct a full investigation into Officer Harper's actions. Please know that this is not representative of our department." Bill nodded, appreciating the gesture but still troubled by the events. "Thank you, Captain," he replied. "I understand mistakes happen, but this felt deliberate. It's like someone wanted me stopped for reasons beyond a routine traffic violation." Dawson hesitated, exchanging a glance with Myers. "That's what we intend to find out," he said finally. "In the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you could come down to the station tomorrow to provide a formal statement. And if you notice anything unusual moving forward, please report it immediately." As the officers packed up and prepared to leave, Bill sat quietly in his car, replaying the night's events in his mind. Something about Harper's behavior didn't sit right. Why had the officer been so quick to assume guilt? And why had he reacted so violently when challenged? The questions swirled in Bill's head as he resumed his drive home. The peaceful evening he'd anticipated was gone, replaced by a nagging sense that this incident was far from over. Little did he know, it was only the beginning of a much larger puzzle, one that would force him to confront old enemies and uncover hidden truths lurking beneath the surface of his seemingly quiet retirement. Document. Part 5. The safe house was quiet as William Bill Carter, Laura Myers, and Samantha Sam Lewis reviewed their plan one last time. The documents they'd recovered from the warehouse were damning, enough to put Victor Kane behind bars for life. But getting those documents into the right hands without tipping him off was the challenge. Kane's network ran deep, and his lawyers were already working overtime to shield him. If he fled the country, justice would slip through their fingers. "We need to hit him where it hurts," Bill said firmly, spreading a map of the city across the table. His main office building downtown. That's where he keeps everything that matters. His records, his money, his connections. Myers frowned, pointing to the towering skyscraper marked on the map. "It's heavily guarded," she warned. "Even with our evidence, we can't just walk in there. We'll need a distraction, a big one, to draw attention away from us." Sam nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the layout. "What about the press?" she suggested. "If we leak some of this information to reporters, it'll create chaos. People will demand answers and Kane won't be able to hide." Bill liked the idea. Public pressure could force Kane's hand, making him vulnerable. "All right," he said. We split up. "Sam, you handle the media leak. Make sure it spreads fast but doesn't point back to us. Laura and I will go after Kane directly." By mid-afternoon, the city buzzed with rumors. News outlets reported allegations linking Victor Kane to human trafficking, bribery, and illegal arms deals. Protesters gathered outside his corporate headquarters, chanting slogans and holding signs demanding accountability. Police barricades lined the streets as tensions escalated. Inside the building, Kane paced furiously in his penthouse suite, surrounded by panicked advisors and bodyguards. His phone rang constantly, each call bringing more bad news. "Find out. Who's behind this?" he barked at his head of security. "I don't care how much it costs. Shut it down." Meanwhile, Bill and Myers prepared for their infiltration. Dressed in plain clothes and carrying forged credentials, they blended into the crowd gathering near the building. Undercover officers had been positioned strategically, ready to assist if needed. As chaos unfolded below, Bill and Myers slipped through a side entrance, avoiding detection. The lower floors were chaotic, filled with employees rushing to evacuate or lock down sensitive areas. Using the confusion to their advantage, Bill and Myers made their way to the executive elevator. A pair of guards stood watch, but Myers flashed her badge, claiming an urgent matter required their presence upstairs. Reluctantly, the guards stepped aside. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, they found themselves face to face with two more guards stationed outside Kane's office. This time, Bill took the lead. "Internal affairs," he said calmly, showing his fake ID. "We've, received credible threats against Mr. Kane. We're here to ensure his safety." The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Before they could argue, Myers stepped forward, her tone authoritative. "Do you want to explain to your boss why you turned away investigators during a crisis?" That did the trick. The guards stepped aside, allowing them access to Kane's inner sanctum. Victor Kane sat behind his massive desk, his face pale with fury. Papers were scattered everywhere, evidence of his frantic efforts to protect himself. When Bill and Myers entered, he looked up, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice cold and commanding. "William Carter," Bill replied evenly. "Former director of the FBI. You might recognize my name. It's been mentioned quite a bit lately." Kane's expression darkened. He leaned back in his chair, attempting to project confidence despite the storm brewing around him. "You think dragging my name through the mud will accomplish anything? I have resources you can't even imagine." "That may be true," Bill countered, stepping closer. "But you underestimated one thing. Me." With that, Myers produced a flash drive containing copies of the incriminating documents. She placed it on Kane's desk, letting it clatter loudly against the polished surface. "This is just a taste of what we've uncovered," she said. Every crime you've committed, every life you've ruined, it's all here. And it's going straight to federal authorities. For a moment, Kane said nothing, his gaze locked on the flash drive. Then, with surprising speed, he lunged for a hidden compartment in his desk, pulling out a handgun. "You think I'm going down without a fight?" he snarled, aiming the weapon at Bill. Time seemed to slow. Myers reacted instantly, tackling Kane before he could pull the trigger. The gun clattered to the floor as the two struggled, knocking over furniture in the process. Bill rushed forward, pinning Kane's arms behind his back while Myers retrieved the weapon. "It's over," Bill said firmly, pressing Kane's face into the carpet. "You're done." Within hours, the story broke nationwide. Federal agents swarmed Kane's offices, seizing evidence and arresting key members of his organization. Reporters camped outside the building, capturing every detail of the takedown. By morning, Kane's empire lay in ruins, his reputation shattered beyond repair. As for Bill, he returned home feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. The battle had been long and grueling, but justice had prevailed. Sitting on his porch, he watched the sunrise, savoring the quiet peace that followed the storm. Laura Myers joined him later that day, bringing coffee and a sense of camaraderie. "You did it," she said with a smile. "You brought him down." Bill shook his head modestly. "We did it," he corrected. "None of this would have happened without you, and Sam, and everyone else who believed in doing the right thing." They sat together in comfortable silence, reflecting on all they'd accomplished. Though retired, Bill knew his days of fighting for justice weren't truly over. There would always be another case, another corrupt system to dismantle. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of rest, knowing he'd made a difference. On the orchard, distant birds chirped and the world felt a little brighter.